Welcome to Well, What Do You Know? I'm your host, and today we begin part one of a fascinating conversation with Jim Huber. Jim grew up on a farm near Albia, Iowa, but his journey has taken him into archaeology, geology, environmental research, and even forensic science. Along the way, he's worked on archaeological sites across the country, studied ancient environments through pollen analysis, and even assisted in a real criminal investigation. This episode is full of incredible stories, unexpected twists, and a lifetime of experiences. Here's part one of my conversation with Jim Huber. Jim, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
No problem. I think this will be an enjoyable time.
Yeah. So why don't you start, if you would, just kind of introduce yourself and tell me where you grew up and what you can remember from then.
Well, my name's Jim Huber. I grew up here at Albia, although I was born in Texas, compliments of Uncle Sam. My dad had been drafted at the end of Korea. He never had to go to Korea, but he spent his time at Fort Leonard Wood, so I was born at Fort Leonard Wood. No recollection of Texas because I was a baby when he got out, and I've lived on this particular farm off and on throughout my life. When I was a baby, my mom and dad lived in a little trailer across the driveway from the original house, lived in the original house, moved away, moved back, lived in another trailer. And then when my wife and I got married, we lived in a trailer across the drive for a couple of years. Then I went back to college and we moved away. And I was gone for about 40 years. And then I bought this farm in between time. And we moved back, built a new house and buildings, and we're farming on my grandpa's farm.
And you said your dad was drafted? Is that
yes,
right? What branch?
He was in the Army,
okay.
And he signed up to be a bootmaker. That's because he loved leather work, and they made him a cook. Well, he was a good cook, but that was not, they said sign up for what you want to do, and he wanted to be a bootmaker, and they made him a cook.
Yeah. So you have siblings?
Yes, I have a younger sister that's 6 years younger than me, and a brother 9 years younger than me.
So they don't remember Texas. They weren't in Texas at all.
No, they were born in the Albia Hospital.
Okay. So getting back up here from Texas, then you said you don't have any memory of Texas at all. So really, your childhood started here.
Yes, I was a baby. I mean, I was under. I can't give you an exact date, but I was born in January, and I think my dad got out the following October.
Okay.
So I was under a year old.
Yeah.
So I have my first memories is in the old house that used to be here when I was about 2.
Okay.
I can remember a couple of things, and that's about it. And then we lived near Van Wert for 1 year on a farm that my grandpa owned, and then came back. And I was pretty young. I was like 3 when we were down there, and I just have little fleeting memories.
Right.
But all my growing up life was right here south of Albia.
Okay. And you mentioned 2 siblings, but quite a bit older, or quite a bit younger than you, correct?
Yeah. Well, they told my mom after I was born she had a collapsed lung and stuff that she shouldn't have more kids. So it was farther down the line they decided it was okay, and she had my sister and then later my brother.
Gotcha. Okay. You were old enough then 6 years old when your sister was born, 9 years old when your brother was born. You have to have some memory of having those new siblings, right?
Oh yeah, I remember when my sister came home from the hospital. She was born the 1st of July, and it was a cold July. And she came home on the 4th, and it was very cold that day. I remember having a coat on and riding my pony when they brought her home from the hospital.
Oh wow!
Because my grandma was here with me.
Yeah, right. And then what about your brother? You remember the day he came home?
I don't remember so much the day he came home, but within a couple of days, we had a really, really bad thunderstorm. And my dad had just built a new barn, and they were trying to get hay in. And my grandma was here because my brother had been born, and it was terrible. And I remember that my grandma kept saying, "Don't squeeze the baby," to my mom because she was so scared of the storm.
Right. And you guys grew up right here on this farm?
No, actually, 2 miles down, about 2 miles as the crow flies to the southwest.
Southwest, okay.
Yeah, it's just a little ways over there.
Yeah.
This was my grandpa's farm. My dad bought the farm over there. And I was back, I mean, you know, I spent a lot of time here with my grandparents. And my grandma died fairly young, but my grandpa, I was here with him a lot.
Yeah. And your dad was a farmer, obviously.
He was a farmer, and then he had a saddle shop. He got hurt, and he went and started this Ken Huber saddle shop and repair, and did that most of his life.
Back in the leather works, like he wanted to be in the first part. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you remember most about growing up on the farm?
Oh, I remember, well, early, you know, my dad farmed quite a bit with small equipment,
right.
You know, and he was always, he never slept, it seemed like. He was always farming. And I remember when I was a young kid, he bought me a goat that had a harness and had a cart, and I got to drive it around. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
The goat's name was Brownie.
Yeah.
And I just had a lot of fun with that goat, you know. I remember, you know, I'm a farm kid. I had to chore every day.
Right.
And the other thing I liked science and fossils, and we had an area down in the farm where there were a lot of rocks with fossils, and I'd go down and collect them, and my mom would say, "Don't you have enough? They're all the same." And I said, "No," but
they weren't the same, were they?
No. I collected a lot of fossils down there, and then found an arrowhead in a creek once, and that was pretty cool. And, and that kind of led me to where I went to school. But
yeah. So before we get there, just go to Albia Community Schools?
I went to Albia High School.
Yeah. Okay.
And because my dad had a saddle shop and we sold stuff and did a lot of things different, I didn't fit in real well, but I ran track, and that was great because it was individual based on your ability.
Mm-hmm.
I love track.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a cross-country team at the time, so but I loved track, ran, and then after, when I became a master's student there in Duluth, there was a track club, and I joined it and did a lot of running after high school, ran a lot of marathons, ultra marathons, learned to swim at 22 so I could do a triathlon.
Oh, wow. You had to learn to swim. So the goal was the triathlon, but you had that one piece that you needed to finish.
Yeah, I didn't have that goal when I started the running, but then I decided I'd like to do that. Yeah. So it's been an interesting life.
Yeah. Back to your parents real quick. We mentioned what your dad did. What did he do? Was your mom a homemaker at the time?
My mom was a homemaker all the time I was there, but she also worked in my dad's saddle shop.
Oh,
and did stuff. And then later in life, she was a meter reader, and my dad would drive her, and she'd read the meters, and they loved it because they talked to everybody.
Yeah.
And then for a while, she was the hostess when they used to have those at Hardee's, and she loved that because she got to talk to all her friends,
right.
You know. And the other thing that my parents did, they were always the first ones to church, made the coffee, and took the communion trays up. And one time when we lived in Duluth, they were visiting us over the weekend, and the understanding is they got ready for communion, and there was no communion trays because they were so used to my parents bringing them up that nobody remembered them. They had to go get the communion trays to serve communion.
Wow. So they instilled that faith into your family pretty early, didn't they? Yeah.
Right. My wife and I have friends that own an auction company, and we still work for them, and when they have a Sunday sale about once every 3 weeks, and we miss church when we do that. But they're our good friends, and we just don't want to leave them in a lurch, so we always help them out.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so we went through high school, and then you've mentioned Duluth a couple of times. Did you go straight from high school to University of Duluth?
No. I went from high school. I went 2 years to Indian Hills in Centerville,
Okay.
and then I got married.
Okay.
And my wife went to what is now part of Indian Hills, and I can't remember the college name. It was the Catholic College in Ottumwa. And I was working in my dad's saddle shop.
Okay.
And then I decided that maybe I wanted to go back and go to finish my college degree. So I took microbiology at Indian Hills and decided, yes, I wanted to go back. Then I went to the University of Iowa, but I had applied to the University of Iowa and also to Iowa State because I didn't, well, let me back up a bit. Between my junior and senior year in high school, I went to a summer field course at the University of Iowa for college credit, and we went out to Yellowstone and did a lot of, we had to have a project, and I worked on tree migration, and I was very interested in archaeology and paleontology. Plus, I was also interested in forestry, and the same summer I went to the Trees for Tomorrow forestry camp in Wisconsin that's sponsored through the high school, and the bankers paid for your scholarship to go. And I didn't know when I went whether I was going to go to Iowa in anthropology or go to Iowa State in forestry. And my in-laws lived in Missouri at the time, and we were down visiting the weekend that I had to make up my mind which school I was going to because my wife was a music major, and she was accepted both places. Sure. It would work out. And I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I took a walk down through this area close to my in-laws, and I found a scraper, and I thought, I don't know what I want to do, and I kept thinking about it, and finally I said, I'm going back down there where I found that scraper, and if I find any part of an arrowhead, I'm going to Iowa into anthropology with emphasis on archaeology. And I went back down, found the broken base of a arrowhead, so I said, okay, I'm going to Iowa, and it worked out.
Yeah. So let's pause there for just a second, because you mentioned you were already married to your wife at this point. So
correct.
Tell me the story. So how'd you two meet?
It's a better story from her, but I was dating her best friend.
Okay.
And her best friend was not overly interested in me and kind of dumped me. And we were at the Blakesburg Corn Carnival, and I was talking with her, and she wanted to dance. There was a band, nobody wanted to dance, and I danced with her. And I ended up asking her out, and I asked her, she was still in high school, I was out of high school. Mm-hmm. And when she was still in high school, I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. We had to wait till she got out of high school. And she turned 18 on the 19th, graduated like on the 21st or 2nd, and we got married on the 30th. But her parents were moving that summer, so we kind of, we didn't have a lot of, they were moving to Missouri from Blakesburg, so we did it over Memorial Day weekend because I've got relatives in Minnesota, and she had relatives from away, and that gave them a day to get there, a day for the wedding, day to go home.
Wow. Just another classic Blakesburg Corn Carnival love story, it sounds like.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Were you traditional in the case that you asked her dad? And
no, I didn't ask her dad.
You didn't. It sounds like you didn't have time.
Well, I had time, but it didn't occur to me, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And I did it one day when we were driving on the spur of the moment, and although I did have an interesting talk with her mom and dad after that, but it all worked out.
Yeah, I'm sure they were a little shocked. I mean, their daughter was still in high school, right?
Yeah. But we will celebrate our 50th anniversary this May 30th.
That's awesome. Congratulations. That's great.
And
so 50, let's see, I'm no math major, but that must have been about 76?
Yeah.
1976? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, she graduated in between, all that, and we got You know, it was a really busy 2 weeks for her.
Yeah, I'll bet. It sounds like it. You had a graduation party followed by a bridal shower and engagement party and
all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
So you decided to go to Iowa, and you said she was. You guys were already married at this time, right?
Right.
And she was a music major, so you
Correct.
both went to Iowa City?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, she started as a piano major and then switched to voice, but she has a music education degree to teach music.
Mm-hmm.
Although, other than some private lessons, it didn't work out because she had 3 years of college left and I had 2 when we went there.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were at Iowa City, I was going into doing the anthropology degree, and I went to a meeting of the Iowa Speleology Society, and because I thought caves were cool, and there were archaeological sites in caves,
Right.
and I kind of hooked up with those people, and most of them were geologists, and I got sort of interested in geology. And at the same time, I took a course that was only offered once at Iowa because a professor was on sabbatical and his doctoral student taught Greater Southwest archaeology, and she really emphasized the geologic and botany side of archaeological sites, and I got really interested in that. Well, in the meantime, with all this going on, I decided to double major in anthropology and geology.
Mm-hmm.
And then that took me 3 years, so we got done the same time. But I ended up getting a BA in anthropology and then going back and getting a BS in geology because you couldn't double major, you had to get one or the other.
Oh, sure.
And my first main geology course, Intro to Geology, was taught by a palynologist, person that studies pollen.
Okay.
And recreates environment from pollen from lake sediments, archaeological sites. And I got interested in that, which kind of put the forestry and the archaeology together. And I did a lot of environmental work for archaeological sites. That's mainly what I did. I mean, I did archaeology, but I also did a lot of the environmental stuff for archaeological sites, more than the straight archaeology.
So that decision that you were trying to make between Iowa and Iowa State and the two paths really kind of converged at Iowa, didn't they?
They did.
Which proves that Iowa's better.
Well, Iowa's great. I know I'm a Hawkeye. But I cheer for the Hawks. I cheer for the Cyclones. But when they play each other, it's Hawks.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
I like to see any Iowa team win.
Yeah.
You know. But then from the University of Iowa, I applied to 6 grad schools, and 3 of them accepted me, and 1 offered me an assistantship. And so I ended up at the University of Minnesota Duluth, and I worked for a professor that was also a dean and did a lot of different things. And because of that, I was able to get a wide variety of experience. I mean, I did archaeology, I did the pollen work on a lot of stuff. I've worked in about on material. I haven't been to every state, but almost every state east of the Rockies and 7 foreign countries. And I also got to be the field director for a multi-million-dollar mercury contamination project in northern Minnesota and Wisconsin. Because of what he did, I learned to identify fish really fast one summer. And it was great working for him because I got vast experience in a lot of different areas. And then we were still doing archaeology, and I was doing archaeological geology, and it was wonderful. Although some of the field work was, especially on that mercury contamination project, it ran way up into the fall, and I was working with a guy from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and it started snowing and it was windy, and we had one lake to to get, and you wore your life jackets that day because if you'd have gone overboard, it was the only way they'd find your body. You weren't going to survive.
Wow.
It was a terrible day. We came in, I went back to Duluth, and that was on Halloween. We got 39 inches of snow that night, and it lasted till June. Plus, we had more snow on top of that.
Right.
You know? So it was a nasty day, but we finished up the field work and got it done.
What, you ended up with your doctorate from University of Minnesota?
Yes, I got my master's there in geology, with a minor in biology and a related field in anthropology. Then I did my doctorate in interdisciplinary archaeological studies, and you have to have 2 majors for that, but I actually had 3. I had archaeology, palynology, and geology, and I worked in all those fields, but mostly as a palynologist, recreating the environment from pollen preserved in sediments and lakes.
That seems like a very specific field, right? Working with pollen. You don't hear that a whole lot. What drew you there?
Well, my first geology professor was a palynologist, and I just got interested. I did an undergraduate thesis, and again, that's how I started doing it for archaeological sites. It was a bog not too far from an archaeological site, and we radiocarbon dated the bottom and correlated to what the environment would be like at that archaeological site when it was inhabited. And also from the pollen, which we'll probably get to, but I had to do a lot of research on the plants you find to see if they were usable as food sources or other sources for Native Americans, and that's helped me a lot in what we're doing here today, and we'll get into that.
Yeah. You mentioned to me in a previous conversation maybe a case that you helped with with pollen.
Well, yeah, the most interesting thing I ever worked on was a murder kidnapping case, and it was also the most stressful.
Yeah.
I looked at sediment from under the pickup they assumed was used in the abduction to see if they could figure out where the body had been thrown or stashed or whatever. And so I analyzed the pollen, and if you're looking at a 10,000 year record and you make a mistake on a grain or two, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, a mistake could be very detrimental to what you're trying to do.
Right.
So I had a little more questionable identifications on some stuff. And everything matched up with where they ultimately found the body, which was on his acreage there in northern Minnesota. But he had, I believe it was using jet fuel and burned the body, but there was a few scraps of bone and part of a jaw left, and they actually identified her by a tooth. That she had a filling that was a new filling type that the dentist had used as a trial. It was kind of a trial deal, and that way she would have been the only one in that area to have that filling type. And the name was Katie Poyer. It was all over the news, and it caused some changes in how her abduction and murder. Now gas stations up there are required to have 2 people at all times rather than just one, because she was on by herself. So.
Right.
But it was, I worked really hard on that and tried to help the best I could. I didn't charge anything. I just did it because I have 3 daughters, and I would want my daughters to, if something happened, people to help me. So.
Right. Hey everyone, it's Eric from the Well, What Do You Know podcast. One of my favorite parts of this show is getting to sit down and hear real stories from real people, because when we actually listen, we find out we're not so different after all. If you've ever thought, hey, I've got a story worth telling, or you know someone who does, I'd love to hear from you. Just check out the description of this podcast and you'll find my link tree. In there is a guest form to fill out. And keep in mind, there's no cost involved, and I bring the studio to you. So fill out that guest form. I'd really love to talk to you. So I'm curious as to how you got connected with that case. Did they reach out to you?
Yes. Somebody told the people working on the case that they should get a hold of the archaeometry lab, which is where I work. And initially they wanted us to do a sediment analysis of the mud under the truck to compare it. And I was talking with them, I said, well, maybe the pollen would do us more good, because your sediment would cover a wide area. The pollen might be restricted. And one thing that was from the pollen that restricted it was, in northern Minnesota, they call it white cedar, or it's not red cedar. And there's a lot of red cedar around the area where the abduction happened. I had a lot of red cedar pollen, which is different from the other cedar, and that helped. I mean, everything I had matched the place where the body was disposed of.
Right.
Although my work didn't take them there, they were already investigating that, but it reinforced that it could be there.
Yeah, it was strong evidence, it sounds like, at least. Yeah.
Although I never had to go to court or anything, because
that's good.
It was found by other people on there.
Right. That case seems like an anomaly. A good use of your knowledge and your degree and everything like that, but it does seem like an anomaly. What were you doing otherwise?
Well, as far as pollen, I did a lot of reconstructions from lake sediments. In northern Minnesota, almost every archaeological site's on a lake, because there's a lake everywhere. Right. And pollen's preserved really well in lake sediments, because they're a reducing no oxygen environment, and the pollen doesn't degrade. Even though it's really tough stuff, it will degrade in wet, dry conditions.
Okay.
You'll have some, but it takes a lot more work to do that, and I've done both. But I'd look at the pollen over time and how it changed, and the environment changed, and how people would have to adapt, or things, over time, to the changing environment. A lot of people don't know this, but 4,000 years ago, it was 3 to 4 degrees Celsius warmer and drier, and the prairie migrated 120 miles to the northeast, or 120 kilometers to the northeast. And so that changed the environment. In fact, during that time, spruce moved out of northern Minnesota and then migrated back in when it became cooler and moister again.
Okay.
But my doctoral dissertation was on, when did wild rice come back into Minnesota after deglaciation? When was it there as a food source, and when was it there as an abundant major food source? Okay. And I worked on that for my doctorate.
Your wife had her music degree while she was up there, correct? She had already had that?
Yes.
And so what was she doing up?
Well, when we moved up there, that was when there was a big recession and they weren't hiring teachers. And she ultimately got a job with Maurice's in their corporate office. And she was, I can't think of the name of it. She had a division, Eastern Division, and she'd go out to the East Coast and visit stores and then report back and do stuff like that. Worked in the office. And then she got her master's in management at the College of St. Scholastica, and also moved over there and worked there. And then she applied to National Louis in Chicago, which has a distance learning program, and got her PhD. She went once a month to Chicago.
Wow.
And got her doctorate in adult education.
So bachelor in music.
Right.
Master's in management.
Right.
And doctorate in adult education.
Correct. And she was the human resources director for the city of Cedar Rapids for several years.
So she could start her own business giving music lessons and run it really well.
Yes.
Because that's
Yes.
all the degrees.
And she actually, well, she plays the piano every Sunday we're home at church.
Uh-huh.
There's another Connie, her name's Connie, but there's another Connie that plays when she's not there.
Okay, all right.
And then she's also done one girl in the congregation applied to school and as a voice major, and she helped her prepare to go and do the, I don't know, they listened to her. She helped her prepare for that.
The audition.
The audition, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And, she helps out
Yeah.
kids every once in a while.
So now you're back on the farm here doing a lot of different things, which we're going to get into. What was that transition? You're in northern Minnesota. You're doing the pollen work, and now how did you transition back to here?
Well, we transitioned. It was kind of different. We moved to Vinton,
Okay.
because my wife, we were both looking for a job. She found a job first, and she got the job at Cedar Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother rodeos, and one of his sponsors was a different auctioneer than I worked for, and realtor at Vinton. And we just asked them if there was something in the area, that we would be interested in. And they happened to have an acreage at Vinton that we ended up buying. And so we lived at Vinton, but Connie commuted to Cedar Rapids.
Okay.
And I consulted doing pollen work, and then we had another recession, and my pollen work I was doing it for archaeological sites, but when they pay for that, there's laws that you have to do the archaeological work, but the pollen was sort of an extra deal. And when the recession was, they said, okay, we're doing the archaeology, nothing extra.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of hurt my business really bad. And my kids had stuff for 4-H and FFA, and we had some extra ducks, and we had butchered some, and somebody said I should talk to this meat guy about ducks. And he said, well, I sell to a cooking school, which I can sell directly off the farm stuff. He said I might be able to sell a couple a month or whatever. Mm-hmm. And 2 weeks later, he got a hold of me and said, can you do a dozen a week? And I said, I can for about 4 weeks, and then I'll have to build up to it, but right. I can do it. And I had a relationship with him. We did the ducks, then we did 15 meat birds, and then I also was raising rabbits, and we would do whatever rabbits they needed. And we we had 2.5 acres, and we kind of outgrew it. My wife retired from the city of Cedar Rapids. I bought my grandpa's farm. My brother was farming it, and we decided that we'd just move down here. And in the meantime, the things changed at the cooking school, and he kind of lost out on that. Mm-hmm. And we moved down here, and I kind of expanded the farm stuff that I had, certain aspects, and restricted other aspects. Instead of having 250 or 2,500 chickens, I have 150 sheep. But okay. We kind of changed things, but then we started doing value-added stuff, and we grow popcorn and have honeybees and make maple and walnut syrup and other syrups. So we moved down here, and we kind of switched. I haven't done pollen work for several years, although I use a lot of the information I learned from that in what we're doing today.
Sure. Yeah, if you're working with honeybees, I'm sure you do.
Well, that, but also all the research on how plants were used or available for Native Americans to use, and what you can do, and how edible are they. I know a lot of plants that you can utilize. It's just, can you utilize them and sell that product?
Right,
you know?
Right.
Thank you for listening to Well, What Do You Know? The podcast created to tell people's stories. Everybody's got a story, and every story is worth saving.
The views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Well, What Do You Know podcast, P Square Design, Pagitech LLC, or our sponsors. The Well, What Do You Know podcast, its parent company, and its sponsors are not responsible for any statements made by guests during the recording or publication of this episode.